Hello students, welcome to Digital Learning. I am Shubha Hiremat, Assistant Professor of English Government First Grade and PG Center, Dharwad. In this session, let us understand the life and works of Lord Byron and P.B. Shelley, who belong to second generation of Romantic poets. In the previous session, we already understood the works and contribution of William Wordsworth and Coleridge, who marked the beginning of Romantic age in English literature, which ended with Queen Victoria's ascension to the throne in 1837. For the sake of understanding the poetry of Romantic age divided into two groups, the first generation and second generation, and in this session, let us understand the life and works of second generation Romantic poets and in what way they differed from the previous generation. The main difference of writing poems between first generation and second generation is that the poems of Wordsworth was simple, and he wrote poems on the subject matter like common life, rustic or nature, the landscapes, and he believed in continuity. He believed and wrote on child memories, experience, and Coleridge also wrote on the supernatural elements or philosophical aspect of life. But second generation of poets, they wrote poetry which consists of complex language. They wrote in elegant diction to express their philosophical ideology. One more thing which made them distinguished is that all the three poets of second generation, it may be Byron, Shelley or Keats, all of them died at an young age, and they left England and settled in Italy. They were generally disillusioned. They expressed this kind of clash or unbridgeable gap between real and ideal in their poems. They were against tyranny in England. Their feelings are fatal, deceptive, ephemeral, which is found in the poems like La Belle Dame Sans Mercy by John Keats. These are the three young poets of second generation. The first one is Lord Byron, followed by Shelley and Keats. George Gordon Byron. He was leading figure in Romanticism, who is known for both his personal life as well as poetry. He was born on 22nd January 1788, and his parents were John Byron and Catherine Gordon. George Gordon Byron was the son of Captain John Byron. After her husband had squandered most of her fortune, Mrs. Byron took her infant son to Aberdeen, Scotland, where they lived in lodgings on a meagre income. The captain died in 1791. George Gordon Byron had been born with a club foot and early developed an extreme sensitivity to his lameness. In 1798, at the age of 10, he unexpectedly inherited the title and estates of his great uncle, William, the fifth Baron Byron. His mother proudly took him to England, where the boy fell in love with the ghostly halls and spacious ruins of Newstead Abbey, which has been presented to the Byrons by Henry VIII. Byron was sent to school in London, and in 1801 he went to Harrow, one of England's most prestigious schools. In 1803 he fell in love with his distant cousin, Mary Chaworth, who was older and already engaged. When she rejected him, she became the symbol for Byron of idealized and unattainable love. However, in 1805, Byron entered Trinity College, Cambridge, where he piled up debts at an alarming rate and indulged in the conventional vices of undergraduates there. In 1807, he published Hours of Idleness, which was his first collection of poetry. A sarcastic critic of the book in the Edinburgh Review provoked his retaliation in 1809 with a couplet satire, English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, in which he attacked the contemporary literary scene. This work gained him his first recognition. On reaching his majority in 1809, Byron took his seat in the House of Lords and then embarked with Hobhouse on a grand tour. He travelled to Mediterranean countries like Gibraltar, Malta, to Greece. In Greece, Byron began Childe Harold's pilgrimage, which he continued in Athens. In March 1810, he sailed with Hobhouse for Constantinople, visited the site of Troy, and swam the Hellespont in imitation of Leander. At the beginning of March, the first two cantos of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage were published by John Murray, and Byron woke to find himself famous. It gave him instant success and fame. The poem describes travels and reflections of a young man, like Byron himself, who was disillusioned with a life of pleasure and revelry, looks for distraction in foreign lands. Besides furnishing a travelogue of Byron's own wanderings through the Mediterranean, the first two cantos express melancholy and disillusionment felt by a generation weary of wars in Napoleonic eras. It reflects upon the vanity of ambition, the transitory nature of pleasure, the futility of search for perfection in the course of pilgrimage through Portugal, Spain, Albania, and Greece. But in his own life, Lord Byron was notorious because of his sexual love affairs and heavy debts. He married Anne Isabelle Milbank in 1815 and had only one legitimate child, who was daughter named Ada. There were many rumors of incest which followed Lord Byron and troubled his life. He left England in 1816, swearing never to return. Byron sailed up to the Rhine River into Switzerland and settled at Geneva near Percy Bysshe Shelley and Mary Godwin, who had eloped and were living with Claire Claremont, Godwin's half sister. In Geneva, he wrote the third canto of Childe Harold, which follows Harold from Belgium up to Rhine River to Switzerland. It memorably evokes the historical associations of each place Harold visits, giving picture of Battle of Waterloo, for example. He spent 2 years in Italy and became interested in writing drama along with poetry. He wrote the two Foscari, Sardanapalus, Cain, and Unfinished Heaven and Earth. Byron arrived in Pisa in 1821, having settled Teresa and Count's Gamba there after the latter had been expelled from Ravenna for taking part in an abortive uprising. He left his daughter, who had been sent to him by her mother, to be educated in a convent near Ravenna, where she died the following April. In Pisa, Byron again became associated with Shelley, and an early summer of 1822, Byron went to Loghorn, where he rented a villa not far from the sea. There, in July, the poet and essayist Leigh Hunt arrived from England to help Shelley and Byron edit a radical journal, The Liberal. Byron returned to Pisa and housed Hunt and his family in his villa. Despite the drowning of Shelley on July 8, the periodical went forward and first number contained the vision of judgment. At the end of September, Byron moved to Genoa and later, in February 1824, he was caught by a serious illness, a kind of malarial fever. Deeply mourned, he became symbol of disinterested patriotism and a Greek national hero. He died in April 1824 and he refused burial in Westminster Abbey. Ironically, 145 years after his death, a memorial to Byron was finally placed on the floor of the abbey. His coffin was placed in the family vault in Nottinghamshire.